Hi everyone, this is Alicia Smith. I'm here today to introduce to you my replicated study, Reducing Social Media Usage During Instructional Time. The original study that I'm replicating is titled Reducing Adolescent Cell Phone Usage Using an Interdependent Group Contingency. Instead of using an interdependent group contingency, I had to make some modifications because I'm a one deep group member. So instead, I decided to use an independent group contingency, which I will further discuss how that was implemented into my study. The purpose of my study was to focus on reducing social media usage during instructional time because using social media has become a distraction as well as a disruptive behavior, not only for students, but for their colleagues too. So my research for this study included school-age children and also college students because the participant, me, I'm a college student, so I wanted to generalize this study across different settings and subjects. So I not only researched what the behaviors of school-age children in regards to technology, but also of social media usage for college students, because that will be the most relevant for a college student like myself. Well, technically, I'm a grad student, but a college student. Now, before I break down the original study, I think it's really important for me to give everyone a quick review over the research for college students using social media, because the original study focused on school-age children, but is it really ABA if I'm not making this as generalized as possible? So I did some research on college students using cell phones in class, using social media in class, and it is found that 30% of information is lost when students are engaging in social media or texting while in class or during lecture hour. 30%. So in response, students tend to perform lower in class in comparison to students who don't use social media. Students who don't use social media or text in class, they tend to outperform their colleagues by 23% in the course. Wow. And my findings are socially significant because we found that using social media in class, texting during class, all this becomes a disruption to the environment. It disrupts the students' learning experience as well as their colleagues' learning experience. And, socially significant because we have to protect the future. And the only way to protect the future is graduating educators, right? Graduating thinkers, graduating people who are committed to what they're doing. So now I'm going to break down the original study so you all can see the correlation between the original study and the replicated study. So a summary of the original study: the students were engaging in using cell phones and it became a disruptive behavior in the classroom. So the researchers hypothesized that developing an easy intervention could curb the cell phone usage in a classroom setting. There are 4 components to the procedures in this study. First, we had a criterion goal. Secondly, we had a primary intervention and a supplemental intervention. Then we have a withdrawal phase, and of course, we have group contingency reinforcers. To elaborate more on the components of the study, the criterion goal requires students to abstain from using their cell phones in the classroom. The primary intervention the teacher used was rule-governed behavior. The teacher provided the rule that if the whole class did not use their cell phone during the class period, then the students would receive 10 minutes of free time. The 10 minutes of free time is the supplement intervention, which is DRO, because reinforcement was delivered after a certain period of time. We also have a withdrawal phase. In the withdrawal phase, was used to test the effectiveness of the rule governing behavior in DRO. And then also, of course, we have group contingency reinforcers, which is the cell phones, which are the cell phones in the study. So now I'm going to cover the methods and procedures of the study. So a little bit about me. I identify as an African-American female. I'm 28 years old. I work a minimum of 60 hours per week as an RBT, as well as student analyst. And I'm also a full-time graduate distance education student at Ball State University. I conducted my experiment in the natural environmental settings, home office, coffee shop, and great room. So to proficiently conduct a study as if it was a lecture, I just engaged in instructional activities for 90 minutes, such as studying, reading the White Bible, completing assignments, completing exams, updating discussion boards. I just did all those things that I would do in a classroom instructional setting. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. So next I'm going to go through the target. I'm going to discuss the target behavior, the experimental design, and my measurement system, as well as the materials I used. And then I'll talk about the procedures. So the target behavior is social media usage, and I define social media usage as any swiping or touching social media application that results in gaining access to social media for at least 1 minute or for more than 1 minute. Yeah. And an example of it would be, of the behavior would be pressing the Instagram icon and swiping to view pictures for more than 1 minute. Non-examples would be swiping past the Facebook icon on the home screen. The experimental design used in its research study, in the original research study, the ABA reversal design to evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention in a group setting. In my study, my replicated study, I used the ABA reversal design in a natural environmental setting without any other members. It wasn't a group setting. The measurement system I used was duration. The primary data collection occurred on Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays between the hours of 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. The materials I used was cell phone, iPad, smartwatches, laptop, or any electronic device that holds the capacity to download social media applications, a stopwatch, pen and paper, and Excel or Google Sheets to report data, and of course, it was a contract. So now we're going to discuss the procedures in the study. So the way the ABA reversal design work, we go into baseline first, then intervention, baseline, then intervention. But in the replicated study, they went from baseline, intervention, withdrawal phase, baseline, intervention. So that's the way I intended to replicate the study. So for baseline, I just used social media without any interference until I established a stable baseline, until my numbers were all the way up on the graph. And then I implemented intervention. And the initial intervention I used was motivating operations, as well as an SD, a signal whenever I had to abstain from using social media from 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. And during my withdrawal phase lasted for 3 sessions, and I withdrew intervention to test the long-term effectiveness of the SD and the motivating operations. Then, of course, I collected IOA using a stopwatch and treatment fidelity, and we'll discuss treatment fidelity and social validity at the very end of the presentation. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit more about the intervention, because In the original study, the interventions were behavior analytic. It was ABA. So therefore, I made my interventions behavior analytic and ABA. So the interventions I used was a contingency independent antecedent intervention, motivating operations for sessions 7 through 12. And you will see on my graph that session 12 actually hit 0. However, when I hit 0, I actually did a withdrawal phase and numbers were spiraling all over the place, all over again. So that lets me know that the intervention didn't work. So the next phase, I decided to use a discriminative stimulus, a visual prompt. So I actually set an alarm, not just only watch the clock, but I actually set an alarm for 7 o'clock and an alarm for 8:30 p.m. to alert me when to not to abstain from social media. And also, what else did I use? DRO. Also used DRO to like to study. After 8:31, I was free to go and use my cell phone whenever, however I wanted. But between the hours of 7 o'clock and 8:30 p.m., I couldn't use social media. So throughout the study, throughout the experimental phase, I found that my motivating operations of having to work late, studying, being on the road, traveling, because I worked in home. I'm just transitioning to a new job, but I worked in home, so I was driving 200 plus miles a day to go see patients and go train other therapists. So I was very, very busy, and then I had to study. So I had very little room for social media, but I had some room. And like social media for me, it was sort of my outlet because my days start off 6 o'clock. It don't end until 6 o'clock in the morning. Don't end until 8:30, sometimes at night. So social media has become an outlet because all I'm doing is ABA all day. If I'm not doing it at work, I'm always doing it at work, of course, but I'm doing it at work. I'm doing it in class. So I'm studying it. I'm living, I'm breathing it. So sometimes the ABA, behavior therapy, all of it becomes very, you become oversaturated with it. So social media was my outlet at night. Like that's how I wind down, was get on social media, find some good gossip, see what's going on with people, check up on some friends. That's what I would, use social media for. So to further clarify what happened after my withdrawal phase. After my withdrawal phase, I did go back into baseline and I repeated the same steps. I just made sure I had a stable baseline. And then right now, I am still recording data, but now my intervention is non-contingent reinforcement. And what I do is I set an alarm at 6:58 p.m. 6:58 p.m. It alerts me from 7 o'clock, and I have an alarm at 8:30 and 8:30 p.m. to let me know when I can get back on social media. So from 7 o'clock, 8:30, I have an alarm, which is an SD, to alert me to not get on social media. And overall, I feel like this is one of the most effective interventions to abstain in. And then knowing that I can get back on social media was reinforcing for me. So now we're going to discuss my results during the experiment. So after my initial baseline, I implemented the MO intervention with an SD, and my social media usage decreased to 50%. It was a decent decrease. However, the criterion was I wasn't supposed to use social media for more than 1 minute, and I was using social media for more than some minutes until session 12. So I didn't meet my criterion goal. So that lets me know that number one, my intervention was ineffective. And secondly, when I went into withdrawal phase, that's when I knew like I would have to find another intervention, like another supplemental intervention with the MOs. Like the MOs were working because my numbers were decreasing. However, the point is I had to meet the criteria goal. So what I did, I went back into baseline, and my numbers typically with an AB design, once the intervention occurs, you would think that the baseline numbers would decrease, but mine didn't decrease. It actually increased. And I think it's because the MOs weren't there so often, like the MOs weren't present. My workload started to decrease regarding assignments. So I had a little bit more time on my hands, just a little bit more. So I think that's what contributed to that increase. But also, again, it shows that MOs alone, as an intervention, it doesn't work. So what I did for my next intervention, to continue my discussion about my second intervention. So with my second intervention phase, it's projected to be a much more effective intervention just with MOs accompanied with an SD, NCR, and DRO, right? It's so complex. It's not as bad as it sounds. So what I did, I used NCR, a non-contingent reinforcement intervention, by setting an alarm. The alarm is an SD, serves as an SD as a signal to alert me to temporarily abstain from using social media from 7 o'clock to 8:30. And I use DRO as another intervention that I know is reinforcing for me to know that after 8:30, I can do whatever I want with my phone. I can use social media how long I want to use it. But for those 90 minutes, I know to abstain from social media. So I'm delivering myself a reinforcer based off of an interval. So one of the limitations with replicating the assignment was really waiting for the project approval. I really thought I would have like way more data, but due to the project waiting for project approval, I might have gotten about 3 weeks of data. And with the AB design, you're alternating between treatments, so you have to go back to baseline, go to treatment, baseline, treatment. So I barely made it. Especially with this experiment because we had a withdrawal phase. So barely made it with the data. But also that's what I like about the alternating treatment design is that it's a very forgiving experimental design, in a way that intervention can be implemented directly after baseline. You really don't have to waste any time with this. If I know, like Dr. Connolly, she required us to do 3 to 4 data points, but with this alternating treatment design, you can do as many data points as you need to because it's a forgiving treatment design. And also, like, changes in sessions or certain variables, it wouldn't have been revealed. It wouldn't have affected the overall outcome of the results. I think another one of my limitations, I wouldn't necessarily call it limitations, mainly wishful thinking. I really wish that I would have measured my on-task behaviors, how long I was actually on task before, using social media. And also, I wish I would have measured, used some type of permanent product to observe how much work I am completing within 90 minutes, because I think that would have been reinforcing too. And I think it would be a reinforcing intervention for a lot of students if they knew how much work they were completing within a time period. You'll be surprised. I think we'll all be surprised how fast we can move without any distractions. So for the conclusion, I'm going to tie in the literature review into my results. and discuss social validity and IOA and treatment fidelity. So first, I'm going to discuss the research I found behind my dependent variable. I found the research study the effects of cell phone use and emotion regulation style on college students' learning. And a few of the key points is researchers focused on the behavior and presented rationale for using cell phones during instructional time. So in the study, we learned that some of the students were experiencing nomophobia, which is the fear of missing out. Another key point is the study used permanent product to test students' academic skills while implementing treatment. So the researchers actually created a comprehensive exam for the students, and the intervention used in the study was rule-governed behavior. The researchers delivered an instruction to refrain from using cell phones, and the results of the permanent product collection in the intervention, it was found that possession of cell phones negatively impacted a student's learning experience, and students who use cell phones, despite the rule-governed behavior, performed significantly lower on exams. Researching the dependent variable it really helped me find the social significance behind my choice of replicating the study to reduce social media usage. So it sort of verified the social significance. I learned about the effects of social media or any type of cell phone usage during instructional time. And I felt like this is something applicable to me, it's applicable to other students. It doesn't matter what level of education. This is a very applicable study to be considered in the educational system. So for my independent variable, I researched the effects of technology breaks on media multitasking with college students. In the research study, the researchers focused more on interventions rather than the behavior itself. In media multitasking, and the study was defined as alternating between completing academic tasks and using technology for non-academic purposes. And the setting I found was interesting is that the students were able to do an independent study, which is very similar to what I was doing during my experimental phase. I did more of an independent study. And the intervention used was technology breaks. And the behavior analytic term for this will be non-contingent escape, which was the primary effective intervention. And the results of the study revealed that technology breaks, which means time with the phone, time with your iPad, reduced the frequency of multitasking during independent study sessions. So I learned this study verified my interventions because I wasn't sure how I was going to intervention. I wasn't sure I was going to choose the right interventions, but it verified that you can have a lot of range with figuring out what interventions to use as long as it's behavior analytic. So this study helped me become creative with my interventions from a behavior analytic perspective. So overall, with this experiment, I think my ultimate goal was to try to find some type of experimental control, which I think occurred because of the SD and the NCR. I really think that I have experimental control. And furthermore, social validity, the experiment is practical, is easily replicable. All you need is a timer or an alarm, and it's cost efficient. So I really think I did my job with the social validity and experimental control. For IOA, I divided the time I was on social media according to my social media app by the stopwatch that I used. And the thing is that I noticed with my IOA, it will always be a little bit longer with the stopwatch because of my operant definition that I would have to be on social media for at least 1 minute or more than 1 minute. So I think that's the reason why it was a little off. I need to find out which way, yeah. As far as treatment fidelity, the way I implemented treatment fidelity as a one group member, what I did, I thoroughly reviewed my data. I counted my sessions. I issue spotted potential problems with my during my experimental phase that could produce false data results. That's it. That's what I did. I just continuously reviewed my data.